Welcome back, guys. Johnny, and
Going on, everybody?
we got super producer Sage with us.
Very, it's a big move. It's hard to get Sage on camera.
That's right.
What's going on? How we doing?
How'd you work that out with his management? That's a lot of negotiations going on.
A lot of emails back and forth.
Okay, I'm glad we were able to facilitate. It's all good.
Let's dive back in. Johnny, what do you got for us
Yeah, I
today?
did. And I swear you're gonna think I planned it. I'm just realizing we're gonna talk about the purple one today, and I'm wearing purple, but I swear to you,
Yeah.
I wanted to wear this. It's so crazy because I have about, I mean, I can't tell how many of these I have, but I literally was like, and now I'm like, oh wow, purple. So it works out. Gonna discuss some Prince gems today. A
Nice.
couple weeks ago, we had Jeremy on who brought up that nice little the
Yeah,
one that's formerly known as Charm, which was
The
kind
diamond
of
necklace.
the
that was
diamond necklace.
crazy.
That was pretty crazy. So I didn't I have one at the end, which is gonna be more the last two, but I'm gonna just dive right in. I just didn't even look. There's a ladder test pressing. Money Don't Matter Tonight. One of my favorite Prince records ever. That's a UK. It's got the sheet in the back of it. Not like it's pretty rare. I mean, it's not like the rarest thing in the world. There's a Sign of the Times UK test. A lot of these were just the white label, so they're not really as sexy as the American when they do them. Here's a Pop Life test. All nice, obviously. This is Insatiable. Now I see this go for probably about $300-400. So now this is a test pressing on specialty typewritten. We've had this discussion in the past. So even though it's a test, it's more of like a promo run. It's almost like the advanced promo before a promo. A lot of the Warner Paisley Park Prince promos didn't have promo on the label. They'd have the gold embossment stamp in the jacket. So there were different presses. The print stuff, the companies would get a little bit more creative. You might see like I know there are two Purple Rain 12-inch promos with different jackets. One, I'm sorry, Let's Go Crazy. One's with the short version, one's with the long version. The long version one is impossible to get because the jacket's always frayed. So just to get the jacket clean. One day I have all the Prince regular promos. We'll do a session one day with all of those because he does have some collectible promos that are kind of crazy. This is one of my favorite albums. This is a controversy album. UK test pressing. Beautiful. And this is great because it actually has that's that promo stamp I was talking about. And this isn't a common one. It's usually embroidered, and it's like embossed, and it'll say lend for promotion. It has a whole bunch of writing you can't read at the top. You didn't see a lot of these. Want to use these for a minute. You
Yeah.
don't see a lot of those. Those are hot. Now this is a hard one. So this is the Come album double test handwritten test pressing. I've never seen that. I can argue that there's just one of those. I've never seen that. Very, very rare. Not one of his greatest albums, but a rare piece. Alphabet Street. I thought we that might have been another one over there. This is a UK 12-inch of When Doves Cry. There are a couple of these. I've seen those go at auction for, decent amount of money. This is nice. This is a 1999 black label test pressing, white label on the flip. Never seen that. One of his biggest records, obviously. Now this is I've only seen one of these. This is crazy. So obviously Vanity Six, he was with Apollonia and the whole thing. So this is the Nasty Girl test pressing album with the sheet. Um, really hard. I've seen this one time, and I've never seen the Time album, self-titled The Time, which I've been looking for forever, which I'm assuming exists. But this is a heavy piece, very, very heavy. Here's The Time. So this is What Time Is It, which is a great album because 777, 9211, and it's got The Walk, it's got Gigolos Get Lonely too, which is hot. So that's that. So I really do believe that the other album exists on a test. That's hot. Uh, Now this is really nice. So, Warner Brothers was doing these, and I always love these with the sheet information. Sometimes they would tell you if it's a cassette, 8 track, whatever it was going to be. These weren't really sent out to radio stations or DJs. These were more sent, I believe, to press. So a lot of time when you saw these were like press people that were going to do interviews or whatever. And her name, what's not on here, Lori Johnson is like, she's on I probably 90% of them. And this is the Prince album, Dirty Mind, Uptown Head, really, really sought after. I never see that. Now this is the I Want to Be a Lover album. So this is the self-titled album. I Want to Be a Lover. Why do you want to treat me so bad? Sexy Dancer and I feel for you, which is crazy because that was circled on there back in '79 before anybody got it. That wound up being the Shaka Khan monster hit that he wrote. And back then, Prince didn't have much success with it, but that's a beautiful, my favorite album of his for sure. And I actually have two of those. So
Oh wow.
that's a beautiful, beautiful piece. Um, Here is a really beautiful acetate of 1999, 10-inch. Warner Brothers did a lot with these labels like this. They were kind of a clouded label typed at the thing. You could see the holes from the acetate going through it. They really didn't make. I mean, I've seen these kind of things that they were one off. They really aren't around. You don't see them. This is a beautiful, another one, that same kind of a weird label. Why You Want to Treat Me So Bad with Baby. Very, very sought after. Big Prince for the Prince heads. Very, very big record. Um, so my favorite album of all time. This is the Prince self-titled album with I Want to Be a Lover. Um, and the Sexy Dancer, Why You Want to Treat Me So Bad, and I Feel for You. Now, if you look at this is handwritten by Ray Caviano, who was he owned RFC Records and he was hired at Warner Brothers to come in and basically spearhead the dance department. So he was signing records. He signed Change, which featured Luther Vandross and Gino Socio and all these other artists. While he was there, Mo Austin, who was the head of Warner Brothers, said, we want you to help us with all of. So you're going to come in with your label, but we want you to help us with everything. So he went on to have remixes done of What a Fool Believes by the Doobie Brothers and Nicolette Lawson, Lot of Love, and so they dropped Prince on him and said, here's this guy, Prince. We need you to help us. So he sent this out. He made one acetate, and I confirmed this with Ray. He made one of these, and he sent it to this radio station. It was untouched. I got it untouched. But the beauty of this was also there was a press kit that is this is, I think, for the Prince people, they might be going to the hospital at this moment because so, the press kit, the picture, insanity, mint condition, looks like it was just pressed. Um, One made, which is pretty sick, and it's my favorite Prince record, and arguably, I mean, his best album. It's self-titled, and it's really cool because nobody knew him. I mean, he had an album before it, and he was, yeah, this guy. He could play guitar, he could play the instruments, whatever, but he didn't have that much of a history at that moment. Now we're gonna get to probably his most important album. Here's a Purple Rain UK test pressing. Really, really nice. Never seen that. Very, very hot. Then we have the South American. This label is, you talk about a sexy label, like that's sexy. And the jacket, I mean, that's to me, I just call me crazy. Here's well, that's African. This is South America. Oh, this one is even sexier than that one. I mean, this might be from Peru. The Warner Brothers, the white, that is just beautiful. But when we have to get to the ultimate sexy, and when we're gonna end the Prince Purple one, without a doubt, his rarest, most iconic album of all time, Purple Rain, test pressing. US album, one made, handwritten, date, just a ridiculous piece. And as a collector in all of my years, before I had that record, I didn't believe it existed. And I used to tell myself, if I ever get that album, I'll stop collecting because I don't believe it exists. But if it does and I get it, I'm good because I'll never be able to. There's nothing else in the atmosphere that in my world that I don't have that's that important. And I still stand by that.
Did you ever ask Ray Caviano if acetates were made of any of those prints like Purple Rain or
Okay. So Ray was gone in 81 and Purple Rain is 84.
gotcha.
So, but there was an acetate of I Want to Be a Lover, one, and I do have that as well. That's a it's not here, but I do it's here. It's just not right with me. But in that package was the album and I Want to Be a Lover acetate,
Interesting.
which is insanity. Um, but yeah, well, Ray Caviano was a big guy with acetates and stuff for his label, and he was very big in the disco movement. His brother Bob Caviano, his twin, was the manager of Studio 54. So
Wow.
they were in charge of the DJs there. This guy Richie Kazar was like BDJ, and he was in charge of they were managing uh Grace Jones and all these other disco artists. So they were very in that world. And they had a direct link to Larry Levan, direct link to Frankie Crocker at BLS. So Ray was one of the most powerful people in disco. And when he was at Warner Brothers, he did his thing. He left, I believe, in 81 and shifted to Atlantic and did a bunch of stuff there. When I got my hands on this years back, and we had done I done an interview with him, I said, by the way, I have this Prince thing. And he's like, oh, there's one. Like he almost cut me off, like, because he knew my question was going to be, how many did you do? And he's like, I did one of those.
Is that for the Purple Rain or for the self-titled?
No, because he wasn't there for Purple Rain. This is
So
for the
it's just the
self-titled.
self-titled.
Yeah,
But I think
The Purple Rain, um, I backdoored into that. There was this West Coast company that was getting a lot of this certain record executives were just putting records through this one place. And the test pressing and acetate thing is like, I'm collecting these, so I'm constantly looking for them. But people don't really know about them, or if they know about them, there's not really a true history. So when you look a lot of these up, you could be very deceived. Oh, I saw that record go for $75. Like that's not worth anything. That's somebody who got screwed and didn't realize this, the rarity of that piece. And I think now it's becoming a little bit more on the mainstream side. But for years, I think that was the problem with the test pressings and the acetate as far as the collectible side, because whenever you looked at a history, if there was a history, they weren't moving for any kind of significant amount of money because people didn't know.
but I think that test pressing, considering it's the only one you've ever seen in all of your collecting, that test pressing of Purple Rain, handwritten label, that's got to be one of the most valuable records in the world.
Absolutely, because our grandchildren's grandchildren will still be hearing things about that album. That's one of those albums that if there's a Rolling Stone top 200, 500, whatever it is, that's always going to be in that list. Whatever, the same way Stairway to Heaven's always going to be in the top rock and roll records of all time. Purple Rain album will always be in that category. So it's
It's
always going to be that piece.
it's it's cool in a way that other huge artists aren't. I don't know if what I'm saying makes sense, but I mean,
No,
you
that
know, you
totally makes
showed us
sense.
a lot of Madonna stuff that I know how insane collectors of Madonna are. I mean,
Yes.
but and maybe it's because I'm a guy, maybe it's because I mean, those were my first two concerts, but the Prince has a coolness factor in it, where as a collectible, it would just be higher on the priority list for me. I think it would have a lot more wall power, a lot more,
Well, you
you
also
know.
have the movie part, the purple. I mean, his whole studio is in the called like the Purple Rain Studios at this point. They converted it and it's They have the motorcycle there. I had some people reach out to me from Minneapolis years ago. They found out that I had acetates of Purple Rain, Let's Go Crazy, and When Doves Cry. I have like these 7-inch acetates that I've never seen before. And they called up expressing interest, and I was like, I doubt if they wanted me to donate, which is kind of hysterical. But I didn't, they were coming from a weird place with that. But I didn't even get deep into all the stuff I have that, any real Prince person would, give him a limb for these things. Absolutely.
I think there's also an element of when a celebrity passes away, there's a heightened sense about their material from a collectible
Yes.
standpoint, and
Yes.
maybe it's the fact that Prince is dead, but he definitely has achieved, a legendary status.
Yeah,
And
he's probably I think I saw him in concert more than anybody. I think I saw him 4 times. I mean, Prince was, and I don't even consider myself like a Prince maniac. Like I like Prince, but I'm very specific. I'm not like going album deep. Like I have, I like what I like. I'm not like, oh, I could just sit back and listen to, 80 random Prince tracks. That's just, that's not my. I think one of the funny things about Prince is one of the most collectible pieces that always comes up. I saw one go for 25,000, 30,000. Is this Black album, which it's you try to do research, and this day and age you should be able to have as much information as you want. I can't figure out what the version I have, I believe, is the one that's going for all this money, and there are so many of them in existence. I just don't understand why it's going for so much money, knowing that there are so many of them. And then Warner Brothers put it out as a promo. Like this thing exists, and it's people are going between 20 and 30,000, and I don't even understand how that's, and let's use that as the benchmark. If that's 30,000, then how much is the Purple Rain? Like it's just,
Yeah.
if you really put it in perspective, there was an auction that went off, and it was a Prince auction. He really didn't have a lot of crazy stuff, but he had a reel to reel of his first demos. It was a little 7-inch reel. I believe there are 13 in existence. It sold for $58,000. So first of all, it's tape. It's probably going to disintegrate. So even if you had the machine to play it, you can't really play it. You'd have to bake it. There's a whole system. And even when you bake it, there's a possibility the tape is going to get destroyed. So you get one play out of that to record it if you're lucky. So above and beyond the fact that you really can't even play it where you can play the records, $60,000 for something that there are 13 that doesn't include a hit. So how much is his self-titled album with his first hits on it, acetate with the press kit one made worth? And if you
yeah,
just, like I said, you could do that math. However, is it worth 10 times the amount? I mean, what's the number? So that's, when it comes to these things, I often I go to that place because there are people spending on things, and I'm not saying they're misled. I mean, people, whatever people are going to pay is what they're going to pay, and that becomes the value of it. So you can't question why somebody's doing something like that. But as just a businessman, you'd have to kind of say to yourself, well, if this car with this amount of miles went for this much money, then the same exact car with, half the
well,
miles is
I, I,
probably
ki-
worth more money.
I kind of think it's apples and oranges because, I mean, I just don't know anyone who collects the tapes. I mean, it's really rare for someone to be collecting tapes, right? But there are millions and tens of millions of people who collect records. And so,
Yeah, but that's the whole point. The person that bought that, I'm assuming, is like, I'm close to Prince to have this in my hand
yeah,
because he's 13. So
sure.
there's one. So that's what I'm saying. So I understand that, listen, I buy, my father collected everything. And I think we had this discussion years ago, collected knives. So I would go to look through his knives, and I was trying to go through them and see where the value is. There were knives that are $500. There were knives that are 50 cents. And I speak to his friend. He goes, "Oh no, your father was wild. Like he'd go into a place, and you don't know what he get." He was
Yeah, no,
platinum.
no. My only point was that if you show the tens of millions of people who collect records, the Purple Rain, the only known Purple Rain test press, they're all going to want it, right? But if
Yes.
you show those tens of millions of people the tape, a large portion of them are going to be like, eh. You know,
Right. Yeah,
yeah,
I would think so. Absolutely. I would.
uh, I mean, regardless of the fact that there are 13 of them, I mean, it's just a different medium, and
Yes.
that's what makes these high-end sports card numbers interesting is that there's so many people who collect the sports cards that when one goes for a really big price, it's something that theoretically would appeal to so many people because there's so many people collecting them already, and that's really what I hope for the future of these for collecting acetates and test presses is there's such a large movement of collecting records now, and it's growing as the preferred medium to collect rather than CDs or tapes. Records is growing faster, and so the number of people, and that gives me a lot of encouragement that these acetates and test presses will appeal to a lot of people as they get exposed to the knowledge that you're sharing.
Yeah, I would hope so. I believe that should be the case. You would it's a natural progression. I mean, when you look from the coin and stamp to cards to comics to posters, and I mean it really, I mean the records, I said it, in the other call, record music appeals to everybody.
Yeah,
Every other collectible is no, not really. Like I said, you can show me the rarest comic in the world and you will have no effect because I was never a comic guy. So I'd appreciate that you explained to me this is the number one and it's mint and blah blah blah, the vibrant colors, and it was great. I would totally, as a collector, love it, but it it doesn't do it for me.
the other interesting thing about comics though is that, and I think it's applicable to these acetates and test presses, is that there really aren't that many people who read comics. There really haven't been a lot of people who read comics. I think the resurgence and the interest in comics as a collectible has more to do with all these movies coming out. People
Absolutely, yeah.
going and seeing the movie with their parents when they're young kids, or just nerding out with their friends, seeing these movies. And then thinking of a way to kind of invest in that through these comics. But I don't necessarily think they're all people who used to read these comics.
Yes, yeah.
And they're just cool, and they're a cool way to invest and relate it to something that's kind of has a cool factor. And I think these acetates and test presses will appeal to collectors who don't necessarily even have a record player.
Oh yeah, I would. I always say these things are more art than a musical device because most of the music you can. I mean, there are certain ones that have alternate versions and versions that aren't out, but the reality is, I don't really see somebody buying these to play them. I've played them all to make sure that they are in fact what the label says, but I won't play them again. I've
Yeah.
played them. I secure that this is that. Some of the test pressings, maybe. I mean, I have some Steely Dan stuff that I'm a big Steely Dan guy, so Steely Dan stuff is pretty collectible. And I kind of love that. I turn my son to a lot of music, but we have like a Steely Dan kind of a thing, and I kind of now Steely Dan has turned into something that me and my son share, which I think is really cool. Because Steely Dan is, that's an acquired taste. Like people don't really,
I love Steely
Yeah.
Dan. I'm like
Yeah, and I
yeah.
and I feel that people that love Steely Dan, that's a different person. It's a very it's a unique person that's a Steely Dan fan.
Steely
Oh
Dan
no,
is
it is,
yeah.
I've
They're
always felt.
one of the craziest bands of all time. Prince, going back to that for a second, it's interesting because so I've worked with in like the touring and recording industry, probably about 150 artists, and Prince is the most consistent for sure person that comes up in conversation as a reference. Every musician, regardless of genre, has some story of Prince changing their life, and it was interesting even to hear Jeremy talking about how 1999 was like a huge thing for him. Everyone has their Prince story. For me, it was Sign of the Times, which I think that album is underrated. People don't talk about that one as much, but
Yeah.
I just even that song I think has one of the most underrated riffs of all time. The dun 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 dun.
Right.
It's so sick.
Right.
And but yeah, it's like pop, rock, hip hop, whatever. Even like some country artists that I've like worked with in the past have cited Prince as one of their biggest influences. Everyone, the Purple Rain acetate, I'm sure, is like the rarest of those, but each one of those, test pressing. Each one of those has individual value and appeal to each individual person because they have their own thing where it's like that's their favorite album. And I don't know, it's so crazy to have all of that stuff. Like that entire Prince collection is such a massive piece of like music history that you have. I can't really think of any musicians I've worked with who wouldn't be blown away by that. Such a crazy thing. Prince, like what Terry said, Prince is just one of those artists that for whatever reason just everything he did was so stylized and so impactful that it's like he has his own universe, and it's hard to not be fascinated by that at some point in your life, especially when you're younger and you're getting into music.
Well, I think from the artists that respect him, it's because this is a guy who can play every instrument and write and produce his own music. So
exactly,
there's always going to be that level of respect where, listen, you look at Barbra Streisand, she's a phenomenal singer, but she doesn't write. She doesn't produce. She goes in, she sings, and she leaves. Now you get somebody else who's doing all of these things. That's a different level. Prince is a different level when you look at that and you say, wow, he wrote every one of his. He did a cover of Betcha by Golly. Wow, he probably did a couple of covers, but for the most part, he wrote every record.
And wrote for other artists too.
That's
absolutely Manic Monday for the Bangles, and he also, that he did the keyboards on Stand Back with Stevie Nicks.
He did nothing compares to you, which was the biggest.
Well, that's also that was, but he recorded that as well. But yeah, Nothing Compares to You. Obviously Sinead O'Connor, but Stand Back, dan, that's him playing keyboards on that. Not credited. And also another thing I thought that was really cool about Prince was because I'm a big Journey guy. I love Steve Perry. And when he wrote Purple Rain, the end, ooh, that whole thing, he basically ripped off Faithfully. And he called them up and wanted to let them know and wanted to see if they wanted publishing and money. And they said, no, it's okay. Which I thought was that's really cool.
He ratted himself out. That's crazy.
Yeah, but how great is that to do that? Imagine you're like, you're on the phone, Prince is like, listen, I kind of lifted this part of one of your records. So like, oh, it's all good. That's crazy.
So
and that was one of his biggest records, which is nuts.
Yeah, it's funny how some of those records just carry on for all time. You're talking about Purple Rain, how it'll be on the top 100 list, whatever. It's interesting because like Prince, I'm 32, so Prince was before me, like a lot of his, and it's funny, probably funny to you guys, but the first Prince like album I really had was the Batman soundtrack, and that was like what I learned Prince as, and then everything else was going backwards. But
and that album has Sexy Motherfucker on it.
Yeah, and it's funny because like. Yeah, I think he was one of those artists that taught a lot of us that it was possible to do that. Like as an engineer, musician, whatever myself, it's like nowhere near Prince's level. But yeah, I'm self-taught and just like looking up to people like that. That's how you, even as a kid, you learn that stuff is possible. You're like, you see that and you're like, I want to be that guy, like whatever that is. And I figure that out, and that's why that stuff is going to be valuable and interesting forever because there's only so many of those people in music ever to this day that have ever had that kind of a profound like multi-generational impact on every kid that wanted to get into music. It's crazy.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's interesting when you're comparing artists like Prince and like some of the other artists who are in your collection prominently and trying to make a hierarchy of them. I don't even know if that's something worthwhile doing, if it's anything other than opinion. But maybe it's just me how much I like Prince. But even when you put him against other huge names, he has a coolness factor that I feel like some of the other names don't have. But
I was gonna say it's funny actually because I was talking to Josh, like this guy that we both know down here in Florida, and he was saying the same thing about the Beastie Boys. How like when he just hears like the Beastie Boys name, it just immediately is cool. Anything the Beastie Boys do is cool. It's just one of those like, you know, like S tier top 5 artists. And some people are like that. They have that, they created their own culture and their own niche that's just endlessly cool. There's a coolness factor to me about the Beastie Boys that's similar to Prince. And we were just having that conversation the other day. He was saying he doesn't even listen to the Beastie Boys, but he's like, I still think they're the coolest band ever. And I was like, yeah, they're just cool. Something about it. They just did something that's so impressive. Everyone kind of just wants to be them a little bit. I don't know.
I was a big, I love Beastie Boys. What I did love is when I don't know if you saw that the documentary, I loved how, you know, when Russell wanted them to do like basically License to Ill 2 and still be in that world, and they left and they were like, wait, but that we're not doing that anymore. Like
Yeah,
we did it and now we're doing something else. And I mean they wound up losing that record, which I mean that's their money record for the rest of eternity. So it was kind of, I understand on an artistic level to, you know, hold your ground, but that is their premiere album. And but they didn't want to do that anymore. Like, okay, we did this party thing, whatever. Now we're doing this. And I thought that was really, really cool because a lot of these artists, I worked with many artists and I always feel that there's a very dark side of the record business. And I've been on every side of it. It's it kind of taints a lot of the music if you let it. If you when you really know why a record was on the radio, why that single was picked, why that record went to number one and some other great record died at 3 or at 11, never even went top 10. There were so many chess moves that were made that the average person will never know. And me
right.
being on the inside and watching how things happen, when you hear these records, they take on a totally different thing. I mean, Prince, when he became a Jehovah Witness, he stopped doing I Want to Be a Lover, Sexy Dancer, Erotic City. He wouldn't touch any of those records that were basically talking about sex. So people are going to
Interesting.
his concert and they want to hear all these records, and he's just like not going to touch them. Madonna was going through shit with different people who were records, and she like would just wouldn't sing Holiday or whatever. Like, people are going there to hear this, and she's like, I'm not paying that guy. So things like that. That you leave the concert. Oh shit! How did he not do those 3 hits? Well, that's why. That's really the only reason he
Yeah.
didn't do that because he didn't want somebody getting paid.
Yeah, I love how the Beastie Boys are so tied to New York City, Brooklyn,
Yes. And
the
that
Lower East
time, and
Side.
not just New York, that time
That's right. And
that was the time in New York.
yeah, and it was such an amazing time that brought forth so much talent and icons who, became global icons.
That time I was in school on Second Avenue and Second Street, heart of the Bowery, Lower East Side, 1982. I was right there. And there was nothing like it. Just going to record stores and walking through the village and St. Mark's Place and fucking Bleecker Street. There was, I can't explain what that was. And the thing that was crazy was I knew it as I was doing it. Usually 10 years later, wow, I missed that. I should have paid more attention. I was in the know. Oh, here's an abandoned, blown out building with a fire, and there's a fucking art gallery next to it. I knew that that was crazy. He's like a fucking, you can't get into this Italian restaurant, Boccancello. You can't get into that place. But right next to it, there's like 2 crackheads. That was art. That was
Yeah.
incredible shit you've ever seen. And I was walking from Bleecker to West Fourth and the West Side Highway, the gay area. That was like, even though it was its own area. That was like, it kind of didn't really bleed into other parts. It was kind of its own thing. The Lower East Side, where I was, Alphabet City, you got killed over there. Hell's Angels around the corner, junkies all over the place. First day my mother takes me to orientation at the school I'm going to, we get off the train. There's a junkie on the floor, needle in the arm. Right next to him is a dead cat on its back with maggots eating his stomach.
Oh
And
my
my mother's like
gosh.
almost in tears, like, what the fuck? Like, how am I going to let you go to the school? You know what I'm saying? But
Yeah.
it was like it was art. It was all art.
But even, I didn't get to New York till the 90s, and I I I always knew that it was at least that period in the 80s was what attracted me the most. Even when instead of like enjoy, obviously I enjoyed my time there, but like looking back at that early 80s music, the graffiti, like following guys like Zephyr,
Right.
and looking at movies like Wild Style, like that whole era, and it's not a shock that led to groups like Madonna and the Beastie Boys, and and it fed into that downtown 80s, and then it led into the 90s, and like, but it was so rich with people who became icons, and I think that I associate a lot of that with the Beastie Boys, whether it's rightful or not. But
Well,
that
yeah,
whole
I mean, because you touched on it, in the 70s when I was writing graffiti and just starting to get into the music, you know, that was a marriage that was going on. By the 80s, it became an absolute force. So there was that link, and there was I think I think one of the great barrier breakdowns of the prejudice racist bullshit was the graffiti and the music. Because all my friends, I was were either Puerto Rican or black, and we were rolling together, and there was never a now if I was with my regular Italian friends on my corner, there was always that kind of whatever the hell that was. But when you were in this world of the art and the creativity, whether it was the graffiti and the music, whatever, that was when we were all together. And that was a beautiful part of that because I think a lot more people that probably wouldn't have jived later on. I think it was because of that foundation in the 70s where the graffiti and the music kind of brought a lot of people together that would never be together. I mean, I was writing graffiti with these like nerdy white guys that if they were in a black area, they would have been killed in 2 minutes. And they wound up being boys. Like, I'm like, that would never happen. But graffiti and music did that. So I think that was a great thing for the time. There was a lot more unity going on then. I mean, you don't really hear people discuss it, but it existed because there were times where you just wouldn't go into certain areas, whichever side you were on. It just that's how it was. I mean, it was, the racism and the prejudice was, I mean, it still exists, but it kind of there was water thrown on it for a good chunk of the 80s.
Yeah, it seems like whenever there's an interest, a shared interest, you can kind of overcome things and focus on the shared interest rather than the differences of people. I always loved chess because sitting down in Washington Square Park for the summers playing chess, and I mean you cannot be prejudiced against someone who is like defeating your mind on the chessboard. And
Yes.
some little kid of a different religion or different race
Yes.
like crushes you in chess, and what are you going to do? Be like, oh, that guy sucks,
Yeah.
like he just,
Yeah.
I mean, it's like you got to respect it. You got to respect
Yeah.
it, and I think it's probably the same way if you're doing something you love artistically in graffiti or in music or um, and that's a great thing about New York is it's such a melting pot, and that you're lumped in, and even on socioeconomic, like you see the projects right next door to some crazy expensive apartment, and you're
Well,
share.
I always found it funny that, I have friends that were just tilting a little bit more on the prejudice side, and you go into their house and all their records are black artists. And I'd be like, eh, how could how could you be prejudiced if like every record in your wall is a black artist? Like it's
Right.
just so. And there's a part in Do the Right Thing with Spike Lee when he goes over and he tells John Turturro, he goes, you're calling us the N-word, but look at your wall. Michael Jordan, Michael Jackson, you have all these black people, and he goes, "Oh no, but they're different." He's like, "Why are they different? We're all black." And that was that craziness that I think it was a good thing when the people came together. It kind of knocked that down. It really did. It's never discussed, but I witnessed it firsthand. I mean, I was in Red Hook, which was predominantly black. I'd bring those guys to my neighborhood, which were predominantly white, and I bring them to the pizzeria. And that was it. I'm with two black guys, two Puerto Rican kids. And me bringing them there is kind of, oh, wow, like that's accepted. So they could bring me to Red Hook and I could be kind of rolling that way. And there was that balance. And that's all through the arts.
Well, thank you for joining us for another episode, and hope to see you again soon.
Yes. Take it easy.